Yeah, so you obviously have some hot takes. So, Instagram's fun, but if you can share it over long form, it's even funner,
Hmm.
you know? Do you want to, uh, yeah, basically just for anybody that's going to be listening that don't know you, tell them like how you got here. Because you're doing like bodybuilding stuff now. Most people have probably no idea otherwise that they'd be like, oh, you're a powerlifter. Like, so do you want to go through like your pipeline to now quick?
Yeah. So I started, we'll actually even go back to high school. High school was like Olympic style training for football, wrestling in the off season, track in the off season, and then, back into the 7-on-7 and stuff like that. Graduated into ASU, obviously not good enough for college football because I'm 5'7" and I was 180 pounds and only ran like a 4.6. So that transition and just like when I was doing like bodybuilding in college, it was like I was program hopping every week. I was doing as much volume as possible. I was doing RPE 10 and just not eating enough either. So I was constantly just fucking just dying. And
Dude,
then on top of that,
it's all about training, right? Like when you're that age, dude, you're
it was
like
just
it's
like,
all about
let's
the gym.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, combine that with like mild alcoholism, you're just like fucking ripped. And so in 2015, I was still at ASU. This is my last year, and walked up to somebody and I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you squatting so much weight?" He was about the same size as me, maybe a little bit heavier. He's like, "Oh, I compete in powerlifting. I'm going to collegiate nationals, USAPL collegiate nationals next month." And I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. You can just lift heavy, and that's like the purpose of your lifting." And so I started looking around, and I was like, "All right, let's find a powerlifting program." And program hopped from 20 different powerlifting programs with no progression. Fast forward, competed in powerlifting from 2015 until 2024 was my last meet. And it was atrocious. It was after a 2-year layoff too. But competed for however many years that is, and and basically just ran into a lot of general injuries. So I tore 3 discs of my spine twice, my L3 through my S1 in 8th grade, and then another time in 2019. And so I just have chronic lower back pain. So like anytime I had a squat, anytime I had a deadlift, like we would just have buildup of that. I started having hip issues, and then started having shoulder issues, and it was just like, all right, I guess like, this is what happens when you're 30. You break down and whatever. And so I was like, all right, well, I still want to lift, obviously. Let's just shift everything towards just pure bodybuilding. And that was since April of last year. And up until last week, I haven't touched a barbell. No deadlifting, no benching, no squatting, just straight machines, cables, whatever. And had a pretty decent transformation. I thought I was pretty hot shit in powerlifting, and then really just focused on that. Really dialed up the efforts on diet and actual bulk cutting, got my gut fixed, all that stuff, and really, really leaned up. Everything looks fuller. My joints are significantly healthier. None of the, I mean, I get a little bit of shoulder stuff every once in a while, and I do the same rehab protocol. But other than that, like, able to set bodybuilding type PRs every week as far as like, leg press or belt squat, or like just everything is able to progress pain free. The enjoyment's definitely there too. You do powerlifting for 10 years and then you're like, fuck, I can't get hyped up for another squat right now. I cannot brace this. I just cannot get myself to do this. and now we're at a pretty cool spot right now. And like,
Yeah.
we'll see if a show is on the horizon as far as like the timeline that we have to also come off of PEDs and get fertile and have a family and stuff. So it's kind of like we're starting to get to this teeter line within the next 2 years of like, if you're going to do it, it has to happen. It has to happen now. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Sick, dude. It's a classic pipeline,
Yeah.
It's an okay pipeline. I did not achieve nearly anywhere close to what you did in powerlifting, but I did experience my version of like walking into the gym being like, oh, I'm tired. And I don't mean sleepy. I mean like I am like on a cellular level.
You
I am
understand
tired.
fatigue.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
like kind of the topic today. It's like,
yeah.
oh, I understand what fatigue now feels like.
Right, right. And it's like, you know what it is? It's like the feeling of central nervous global fatigue that you would feel if you're almost like PRing too quick into a meet, like you're peaking really well, that like the absolute load has just like ascended so quickly that your organism is like, dude, what the fuck? That level of fatigue that you get, but in the off season.
Yes.
And when you get that, you're like, oh, this isn't sustainable. You're like, I can't. I'm like mentally thinking about how I have to snort salts for a set of 5 at 7. Like that's not a good sign. Like,
Yeah. And you also so now what I get to do now is I use the RP hypertrophy app
yeah,
as far as my coaching, like the programming side of it, right?
yeah,
And if I ever want to override something because I know how I feel within the moment,
yeah,
instant. Powerlifting, not so much, because it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to have a coach.
right,
And with that comes like, depending on the coach, depending on a bunch of factors, it's either suck it up, we need to get through this, or okay, let's pull back. And even within all of that, there's the medium of having to communicate, even realizing within the moment of like, oh, I can't do this. And there's a lot of self-coaching that going on there too. So you kind of have these two barriers instead of just one of how is this session going to go today? And just everything that's kind of encompassed in that. And granted with Stu, it was never high volume or anything. We alternated heavy squats and heavy deadlifts every other week to really manage my issues because I just couldn't do both heavy each week. It was like, okay, well, let's spread this out a little bit. And even then, it was still just like, just couldn't really. I want to say I topped out my genetics. I topped out what my body was physically able to do. Likely having like probably nerve damage from the back injuries to like my glutes and my legs.
yeah.
Because I have no ass. I have a.
Me too.
I'm just flat, so I have no ability to like really squat stably, and so
Yeah.
that's where my adductors take on so much, and then I'll have adductor tears
That
because
makes
they're just
sense.
not.
Yeah,
They're taking the load instead of my glutes.
yeah.
It's just one of those things. Like it just didn't, from what I was capable of doing, I think I can comfortably say there was no reason to continue trying to push.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay, so you're gonna this is a part you won't like. You got to give your credentials now because in your world it's not impressive, but in normie world it is. So you have to tell people what you squat, bench, and deadlift.
Yeah. I'm leaning towards starting to give myself more credit.
Nice, good. It's
I'm trying to
impressive.
be-
Like it
I'm getting
is.
better about that. My best meet was this was at 181. I did 600 in reps. I had up down on 611, so that one didn't count, but
This is squat.
squat.
Yeah.
440 bench in that meet and 622, I believe, deadlift. And then I think my best bench ever was like 452 overall at like
In the gym?
198. Oh no, it was in
Oh.
eight.
Oh yeah. Okay.
My best set ever was 450. It was after this last meet. I did 452 for 2 Larson press.
Dude, that might be the most impressive lift.
That I've ever, yeah.
Yeah, for
I've
sure.
never done
That's
anything
sick.
cooler than that. Yeah.
Look, mom, no legs.
Yeah. I was like, well, I did the first one and I was like,
I think I got it.
I think I can do another one, right? And I had no spotter. I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. It was crazy. Anyway,
Like you were going for a single?
I think it was a program double, but it was one of those times where it's like, this is so heavy. Like this is a really heavy weight for me. I've never done even one of this. I've never done 2 of this with normal bench. I'm just going to skip straight to Larson press.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't even really having good leg drive anyway because of some internal rotation stuff with my hips. So I couldn't even really drive at all through that prep. So yeah. Anyway, it's about 600 squat, 440 to 452 bench, and then like a 622 to 633 deadlift.
440, 181 is kind of sick. Okay, sick. So yeah, so what I want like the theme to be here is I want to unravel some of your thoughts and hot takes and reasons why. Because like this is where like Instagram is good for like throwing them out, but then if people want to do a 9-story sequence explaining the nuances, it's like I don't really want to read that. And that's not an attention span thing. It's just boring. But on a podcast or a YouTube or like just chit chat being like explaining it, it makes way more sense.
Clip it together and it reads better over a 15-second span than a 15 slide.
Yeah, that's true. Even just like audio visual, you know what I mean? So yeah, so like basically this world right now, to like set the kind of landscape for it. It's like right now you probably have more of your thumb on the pulse on this than I do. So I have decent, but I think you probably know better than I do. But so from my perspective, it's like we have this situation right now in the fitness, like Instagram world. We'll say fitness world in general, where it's like you have science-based lifters, and you can just call them science-based for whatever, right? There's nuance behind the terms as well. So forget definitions for now, but it's like you got science-based guys that are like everything is all about being optimal. And then you have guys on the other side that are like full meathead bro science, like I don't need evidence, and your resistance curve profile stuff is like super lame. So like and some of your posts recently too, which is like probably where I fall, where somewhere in the middle is like the lamest cop out ever, but like truthfully it is, where it's like, oh yeah, like I care about learning more about where the evidence goes with like training and stuff, but like I don't care enough to override my subjective observation. Like if I notice something works, I literally don't care what I do not care about what the science says. I truly don't. But I do care if I'm like, that area I'm kind of shaky, so I probably need to latch on to something a little better for guidance. Like that's kind of my heuristic for figuring out like what to follow. You know what I mean? But like, what would you say like right now is like what's like the biggest thing right now? If you can think of one thing where you're like seeing all these posts, like what's the one theme where these like science-based optimal bros, the trap that they're falling into that just makes zero sense in your head?
I want to say I forget the term that they kind of use, but biomechanical matching and stuff like that. So they're trying to an example of this is we're just trying to optimize a movement. Have you seen the Keenan flap thing? Like they'll put a cuff, so they'll be seated, and they'll put a cuff on like their upper arm, okay, and they'll do adduction, and they're like, yeah, this works my lat, and it's like,
and well, they're doing lat pull down too, right? But just with
they're just doing this.
Oh, really? Okay,
it's so literally just cuff right here.
Okay, gotcha.
And I finally saw somebody do it in person. And I was like, you're as small as I thought you were going to be. This is insane. It just worked out that way. Crazy.
Yeah, crazy. I'm surprised.
So, I'm sorry for forgetting the term, but, whatever.
I don't know what term. Yeah, I don't know what term you're talking about, but it doesn't matter. Whatever.
So there's that. I would say is a big one because you're trying to optimize exercises and movements, that A, have no evidence as far as anecdotal evidence of ever working, because these are new exercises in a sense, or they're not popularized, if that's another case. In lieu of doing something like let's say a chest supported barbell row, or just even a normal barbell row, trying to isolate specific muscle groups down to the level of, oh, you do this to isolate your upper lat versus your lower lat. And it's like, that's, you're aiming, you're missing the forest for the trees, or whatever the
Right.
fuck the term is.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
just get big everywhere. You're 176 pounds. You
Yeah.
have room to grow in every part of your body. If you just target the lat in general, let's say, but it all, the crappy part is because they choose to be so low volume, they think that they have to choose their exercises so carefully that you exclude so many other choices
Right.
of, like, you're basically going this route of, like, we need to go pure isolation rather than even work in some compounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, oh, if I get my upper lat bigger, that'll just lead to this change in my physique. And they can only do, because they're low volume, they have to keep their total weekly sets of, let's say, back less than 8 sets per week. And they choose to only do 2 sets max per exercise. So you only have 4 exercises to stimulate your lats. And so they'll choose like this stupid fucking Keenan flap thing. And that's for your lat, whatever, if it's upper or lower lat, I don't fucking
Yeah.
know. And then we're going to do Kelso shrugs. And then we're going to do a 2, and like, dude, now they're getting down to doing it just like 2 reps of like a T-bar row. Like, we're going like this because of the stimulating reps model. So to give background on that, I forget the author, but basically, and it's not even a true thing. It's just a theory.
Is it like it's like the effective reps idea?
Effective reps. So the last 5 reps of a set, and
Right.
that 5th rep being RP 10, those are the stimulating reps. Anything before that is basically just a warm up. Nothing, doesn't matter. And so that is where their idea of just doing between 6 reps, 5 reps, and 9 reps is pretty much the range that you should be working in. Anything above that is stupid and causing fatigue, unnecessary fatigue, because you're doing extra reps that are not stimulating. So in their mind, as far as the SRA curve, so a stimulus recovery adaptation model, the fatigue part's going up, but the stimulation part is not. But now I'm seeing people do like 3 reps, 2 reps, 1 rep maxes of T-bar rows, lat pull downs, stuff like that, thinking that they're going to get big. And it's like, it's not really how it works. There's not any anecdotal evidence to show that works. And the anecdotal evidence being that we have thousands and thousands and thousands of IFBB pros that do none of these things. Like, we've already done the studies in a sense with the people that already exist. Why are we
Right.
not doing the same thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're like, that's the thing that I always found funny too, because my like personal attachment to this is when I met Sam, I was science bro, TM. Yeah, like I was like into powerlifting. Done one competition maybe, or maybe I hadn't yet actually. But I've been training that style for a while. I did like the starting strength pipeline, and so yeah, so then I ended up like starting strength into like science-based, research is like my god pipeline. So I'm there at that time where I'm dissecting everyone's training in the gym, being like, that makes sense, that doesn't, that's like, strength curve there on, resistance profile, the fatigue. It's all about fatigue, really. It's like everything comes down to mostly that, where you're looking at it and you're like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, why would you do a drop set? You could just do an extra straight set. It's like, like that's most of it, whereas people would do these intensifiers. And I remember like Sam put me through this leg workout that was like your classic, just like bodybuilder YouTube, like destroy your legs. Like the goal is pain, not growth. And I'm fighting her on it because I'm like, but if the goal is growth, why are we,
I
And
can
like
imagine this playing out in my head.
yes, and I have like more nuance now where it's like, hey, if we shoot for pain, we'll probably still get really good growth. Like that's kind of the whole thesis now that I've got to, where it's like, okay, there's going to be a cost that maybe we could have minimized, but it's fun. It's fun, and here's the thing, it's guaranteed to work. Well, I shouldn't say guaranteed, but it's like what actually is a good example is this is an analogy I use for another thing in my coaching program with my clients actually, but it works for this. My when I played football, when we would be playing in actually no, it was when I was a coach. I was assistant coaching, and the all the coaching staff was like all older than me, and we're coaching young guys, and we're at like an away game, and this is just like a scenario that would play out, right? And it would happen many times. The refs are very much favoring the home team. Whatever, it is what it is, right? Everybody knows what that's like, and we're on offense. We rush for a first down, and we're all fired up because we hit the first down marker. We're good. And then the refs mark the ball, and it's 4th and inches or 4th and 1. And we all erupt and are like, what? Losing our minds. And the head coaches would be like, look at the players that are complaining and be like, it's your fault. You should have made it obvious. Why are you making it close? Make it an easy call for the refs. You should have gone way past the first down marker. This is your fault. And I was like, oh, I love that so much. Kind of same thing with training now, where it's like, okay,
Ownership.
like, yes, and here's the thing, use this analogy even further, to get a first down, do you have to go 5 yards past the marker to get a first down? No, you actually only need to break the plane of the first down marker.
Correct.
So like, why are we this? And also almost from like a philosophical perspective of like, are you really looking to do the bare minimum in your entire life to just get the most? Like everything's all about bare minimum, most ROI. Like that's how you live your whole life. Like that's kind of a sad way to live if everything's a spreadsheet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's like kind of the crux, and that's the exact perfect analogy as far as why I think low volume science-based training is inferior. And even then, the science doesn't fully back that. There's an entire meta-analysis on more volume showing linear growth. Like it's a 1-to-1. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but there's a direct correlation. You do more volume, you get more growth. And that's even accounting for blood still being in the muscle for that. Because that takes like 72 hours, 96 hours, or whatever it is for it to clear out. And the whole, I think I can kind of visualize the argument, but it's, you only need this much to grow. So why would you do more? And it's like, I want to grow more. Why would I want minimal? That's the minimum effective dose to get a minimum effective or minimum result, right? And if I do more than that, my results will go up. I don't understand what we're not like really seeing about this.
Yeah.
and that's where there's so much pushback is that the excuse, there's two excuses. One, it's junk volume and it doesn't count. And two, high volume is XYZ. There's 1,000 excuses for that. And it's not low volume versus high volume. Just because you're going over 10 sets does not now mean it's now high volume, because it's a spectrum. It's not an on-off switch. It's now you're going into moderate volume, which is 10 to 20 sets, which you look at any program that's ever been put out by any bodybuilder. On average, the body parts per week is going to be between 10 and 20. You look at any of those programs that are out by John Meadows, it's about 10 to 20. A bunch of intensifier stuff, bunch of whatever.
Dude, bunch of bro science stuff in there, and it works.
John Jewett has programs out. 10 to 20 for about everything. There just isn't there just isn't anything out there that shows that, besides whatever whatever studies that show, hey, what I know it does come from is they're thinking of this one study because they correlate, if you're not getting strength gains, that means you're not getting more growth. They think
Right.
there's a one-to-one thing there.
Right.
You can grow without strength gains. That's
Right.
You're going to get stronger.
Well, the big thing there is time horizon. It's like people saying, I'm not losing weight. And I go, okay, over what, 4 days or 40 days?
Correct.
Like, you can't just say lose weight, and you can't just say get stronger. Like, over how much time horizon? That matters way more.
Yeah, it's a time and space component.
Yeah.
And it's just so befuddling to me that we want to do less. We want to try and go efficient because we only want to spend 45 minutes in the gym, and like it's a bragging thing. It's like, no, I actually kind of enjoy being here. I really enjoy also kind of socializing. I enjoy pushing through stuff. I enjoy getting this painful pump in my biceps when I do more than 3 sets of curls. Like, it's an enjoyable process for me. And to say, well, it's not working because this and this study. And it's like, no, I think it's working pretty fine because I look this way and you look that way. What are we kind of missing there?
Right, right.
And yes, I will absolutely concede that like pro bodybuilders currently do in some body parts low volume because the stimulus is so high from single sets due to the weight being so high. You do this for 10, 15 years, you're going to get strong on exercises. And with that, so the bigger that you are, the more muscle damage is happening, more CNS fatigue. And just if you're doing more weight, you're going to be more fatigued. And so they have no choice but to reduce the amount of sets in order to grow because that is below their recovery capabilities. And you add that up over a whole program of quads, hamstrings, adductors, glutes, back, chest, triceps, biceps, shoulders. We've got a lot that we have to account for. But even then, it's not to the degree of doing 3 sets per body part. It's somewhere closer to like probably 8 per body part. And that's on the high end of what they would consider to be an intermediate should be doing in order to grow. And it's just, you're doing maintenance volume, dude. And you're going to look the same for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like it sounds to me too like they're conflating. Like, it would almost make more sense if like there'd actually be a stronger argument, in my opinion, if, I guess it's not fair because you and I agree on this and we're just yapping about it. So, but it's like we don't have someone to defend the opposite side. But it's like it sounds to me like they're conflating. Like, it would make more sense, sorry, if they were arguing in favor of maybe a strength-based sport, because fatigue is actually a lot more important in a performance-based strength sport.
Correct.
But with like hypertrophy training, it matters insofar as like how much you can recover. But like, if you're not going to hit legs again for 4+ days, you can kind of wreck yourself.
Yes.
So why are you not doing that? You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to perform. Now you do. People will be like, no, you do. And I'm like, I get it, you do. But the peripheral fatigue can be very, very high, and you can still perform quite well.
Yes. I find now, having done both powerlifting and bodybuilding, the fatigue components are completely on a different level. And that's while doing, in powerlifting, a lot of your stuff is between 1 and 6 reps. I know what fatigue feels like. I know what it feels like to still go into your next session and you're still wrecked.
But not even necessarily sore, right?
Correct.
You're wrecked in like a
Correct.
different way. Yeah, yeah.
Correct. And you still have to bench the next day or whatever that is. And it's like, man, this squat or deadlift fatigue is crossing over into my bench day because of just the peripheral fatigue that I'm experiencing. But On the bodybuilding side of things, it doesn't really happen. And I think I want to say it's more correlated to the amount of reps that we're doing, and that correlates then to the amount of weight that we're doing to hit certain RPEs. I stay between 8 and 10. I don't really go below that unless it's like an intro week. Intro weeks I'll do like a 7. This week I'm deloading, which is another like science-based. You can't do that because if you program correctly, you never have to deload. And it's like, does life never happen for you? You just live in a bubble in a vacuum and nothing, like it doesn't. No. But staying in this 1 to 6 rep range absolutely is harder on the body. It's harder on your joints, especially if you do stuff where you don't really sit in the hole, or you do pauses, or you do stuff like that, and you kind of just you rebound really hard. That's that pressure, that stress will redirect oftentimes to the joints, so shoulders, elbows, knees, hips, whatever, versus more of a controlled, decelerated, eccentric into the hole, pausing, exploding back out, is more of my style. And this is for somebody that's chronically injured, chronically injured. I've had no lower body injuries the entire year. And that's a very unknown thing for me. That is very not normal.
Feels good, eh? Like not just to be not hurt, obviously, but I
Dude,
find
I can walk upstairs now and my knees don't cry. Like I have chondromalacia in my right knee, which is the knee cartilage is disappearing. And it's just like there's no cure for that, right? You can try and regrow your knee cartilage, you can do a knee replacement, you can do stuff like that, but there's not like anything for that. Besides like get stronger quads. But to get stronger quads, you have to have knee flexion, and that involves, the knee stuff. So for me to do, let's say, a 6 rep leg extension, that is severely painful. If I do something like a 12 to 15 rep leg extension, I'm good. There's no issues there. The load is low enough. The pump is crazy. I'm having trouble walking out. It's the legs are growing. We've got DEXA scans to show it. Like I stay between this 10 and 20 rep range on legs because that's just physically what that's what my knees can do. And the scans show it's working fine. I don't.
and you don't really need to micromanage fatigue, and it's fun. It comes back to that too. It's like it's fun. Like I feel the same way right now. It's like I'm at a point where I would like to introduce some more barbell work in. So it's like on my leg days, what I'm introducing in is a stiff leg deadlift. So I'm like I'm gonna run that for a while. It's naturally load limiting, but I can very much target my hamstrings really really well on those, and I can move that into a deadlift from the floor if I want, like conventional deadlift or something, if I want to do that. But that's how I'm going to do that. I miss benching, but my shoulders kind of been jacked up a little bit, but I can work around that. I got to not lift like an asshole, but I'm like, okay, I could add benching into, and then squatting's the one I probably don't want to do the most. So I like it in theory, like in my head, it feels good when squat feels good, but I don't really know if I want to do it with a barbell. Like there's so many good machines that I can actually just I can just squat with that I prefer, like pendulum. And there's that it's called pendulum on it, but it's like a squat pro machine, if that makes sense. I do my reverse lunges off
It's a really big machine.
Yes, and it's got the pads here.
That one's awesome. Yeah.
I love that thing. And it's so good
I can't use it. That one's a very big knee pressure thing for me.
Yeah, okay.
And I have to kind of go without.
Yep.
But I know exactly what you're talking about, where it's like, I don't really want to squat. I can do some different knee flexion, hip flexion, knee extension stuff that if you want to work all quads, all the heads, we're able to do that, but I don't really want to do that via barbell, just because it's painful. And so it's like, okay, well, if I start this session out with doing, like, so last week I did my first stiff leg deadlift in over a year and was still doing 405. I was like, damn. But my lower back was so fucked for 6 days. Like,
Yeah, I'm the
just
opposite,
wild.
dude. Anytime, you know how heavy I had to go on deadlift, like relative to like my percentage of 1RM. You know how heavy I had to go to feel it in my back on deadlift? I never understood that. Just because it's different for me, right? Like for me, my
Yeah.
hamstrings and glutes get destroyed from any hinging. But like
Can't,
my
yeah.
back doesn't do it. It's like I don't know why it just doesn't get torched.
That's so awesome.
It's so awesome. It's like, you know what though? My back would get torched on squats because I would like arch into extension, like really shitty
Okay.
brace. I was
Okay.
very bad at squatting. So
Same.
it's like, yeah, if
Same.
you're bad at squatting, your legs are probably going to say, we're not going to do this. Low back does it all.
Yeah, me
No
too.
glutes. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never gotten, this is the first year, I would say entering this year is the first time that I've looked at my legs and my lower body, been like, okay, like I feel more balanced looking versus with powerlifting. It was very like, you're looking a little Johnny Bravo-ish. And I've just never been able to feel
Yeah.
my legs and my hamstrings and my glutes and whatever in squat via my entire powerlifting career.
Hmm.
And you get kind of limited on your accessory choices because after your session, because after you're like doing your squat or your deadlift, there's only so much you can do. Mainly because we're managing fatigue at that point from your main lift, and for me especially with having the back stuff, man, that sucks the soul right out of you for the rest of the session because you're
Yeah.
like kind of laying face down on a bench and waiting for that back pain to go away. But every time after it, like my ability to output weight and output reps is just severely diminished. And now, transitioning to the bodybuilding side where I can start out a session with, say, a belt squat, or even then, I actually don't even do that. I start out with calves, and then I do like a line or seated or a stiff leg variation for hamstrings. I find that kind of helps out the knees a little bit. And then I'll go into my main quad movement. So it's either a leg press, leg, a belt squat, and then I'll maybe cycle in the angled Smith machine squat again, and there's no issues. And I can still do, because I kind of do like another round after that of like hamstrings, glutes, quads again. So there's two exercises, but I space it out just to kind of balance out the. I'm not really having a focus on any body part. It's just, dude, you just need to get everything big. Everything is small. Just think of everything as small and balance out your stimulus through that session. So, go hamstrings, quads, glutes, hamstrings, quads. And yes, that leg extension, that's your last quad movement at the end of the day, may not get as much stimulus because you are fatigued, but we're still getting some stimulus, right? A lot of the stuff is compound movements. So like my glute movement is a split squat, is a glute bias split squat. But biased, and this is another science-based fucking thing, is biasing certain movements. And I think when people think bias, they think that's the only body part that's being worked. That's not necessarily it at all. We're now going from what is let's say a normal split squat. You're not biasing quad, we're not biasing glute. It's a 50-50 split between glute and quad. If I go a quad biased split squat, we're now going more like 75-25. And same thing with glutes. We're going a little bit more 75-25. There's still quad stimulus in there. I'm still getting fried. I'm still working to an RP 8, 9, 10, in which those body parts are fucked after that set. So I can still kind of count that quad volume. I'm not
Yep.
discounting that at all. And I think
Well,
that's where there's a huge, huge, huge utility and just so much being left on the table by these science-based guys that do pure isolations and zero compounds whatsoever. in lieu of just trying to just focus on getting one part bigger when everything is small. It's like, this is the worst bang for your buck science-based shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, dude. I always had that. My opinion with a good example of that would when you were talking about like biasing. Kind of two things. First one is that there's a subjective factor as well. Like if I personally, I can tell you subjectively on my end, if I do, and we'll use split squat as the example. It's like quad bias split squat and a glute bias split squat. Both of them destroy my glutes. I can go knees over toes and my glutes get wrecked. Right? Now, my quads probably get more stimulus than they do on a glute biased one, but like I can just tell you that the glutes don't come out of it for me. So like that's a good thing to notice too, is like that's why you have to like do these things for yourself, and then you kind of have to, based on that, make an adjustment. Because if I was going to program that for someone else, I'm not assuming they have the same response I do to that. I'm assuming that when they do knees over toes, they feel zero glutes. Doesn't mean they don't get any glute, but I'm assuming sensation wise, they probably don't feel it. I, for whatever reason, get a ton of glute when my like massive forward knee travel still.
Well, I mean, we still have a bunch of hip
Hip
flexion
flexion.
in that. There's still a bunch of hip flexion.
Yeah.
Now, I would say the main driver, let's say you're doing a front foot elevated knees over toes squat, where we're just pure, how far can I get my knee forward? And let's say even then you're using like a heel elevated type of apparatus. You're using a squat shoe, or you have, one of those prime
Yeah.
wedges, something like that. And we're just pushing all of our chips into that quad bias deal. I mean, to say, because we look at the biomechanics of what is happening, the hip is flexing. To say that there's not going to be any glute involvement in that, come on, let's look at things for what they are. You may not feel it, but it's absolutely happening. There's something going on there. And it can also come down to just how so like you being likely a glute dominant person, you're probably posterior bias person, and you have
I don't.
smart
This is the thing. I'm not. I don't think, because like my ass is small,
Okay.
so I'm wondering if it's one of those things where it's some people it'd be like you'd be weaker in a certain area, so then it's hard to get your mind muscle connection or a sensation through that. That's common, right? But I think there's another situation where you're weak in a certain area, so it lights up quicker because it's weaker. Do you know what I'm saying? Like those are two kind of different scenarios, but they come from the same thing. So I think in my case, I'm weak there and it gets torched quick. So I can turn on my quads quick, but I can push my quads through like a high rep, high intensity, close proximity to failure set better than I can with my glutes. But I can feel both really well.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost it's great exercise execution, I think, is kind of what that is coming down to. Because yes, we should have rate limiters. So like a lagging body part is the weak link in the chain, and if that weak link gives out, the whole lift should give out. When and in this case it's split squat or whatever it may be. Yes, your glute can give out, but I would think that since that gives out, so that we look at the 75-25, that 25 now drops out of, let's say, a 12 rep set. So you hit your failure point on the glutes at about set 8 or rep 8. And those final 4 reps, it starts to jack up more as far as quad taking that load. Because think about like when you tear a muscle, right? Like think about when somebody tears a quad or an adductor or a glute on a squat and they still complete the squat. Well, that muscle can't turn on. That muscle can no longer perform the lift. So that load then has to redistribute to different parts of that leg, of that body. And that's how we kind of have, like, we'll see like multiple tears of, because since the adductor gave out on the squat when they were coming up, then they also got a glute tear because the glute went from taking 60 of the 100 pounds to now taking 80 of the 100 pounds. And then, the other 20 going to like quads or whatever. And the glute was only built, like the glute's capacity was only like, dude, I can only handle 60. I can't do any more than this. So I'm definitely not going to say that's a bad thing because you're doing something correctly. And it's not even to say because that muscle is small that it's bad or you're not doing it well. It's that you may just not have the genetics for it. You also died in a way that's not to get as big as possible. So there is going to be, in a sense, gains left on the table in terms of the totality of your career. I'm still kind of thinking I'm figuring out what I'm going to do. I think I'm just in this spot of like, let's get as big as possible for the next 2 years. And then when I go natural, I definitely won't be a tier. Like I'll generally try and go natural. And like whatever I hold on to is what I get. That's what I get for the rest of my life.
It'll be a good test because I was talking to Sam about this, and I'm not sure there's people that are probably in this world that would actually understand this better than me. So this is purely like just speculation that I had. So, and maybe you know about some resources or some theories around this, around people that do understand this, but I have this speculation that is maybe aggressive, but because I've ran so I've been like on tests since 2021, and that's not a super long period of time, but it's long enough that that's shaped my body, like changed my organism, and not even necessarily just muscularly, but just changed me in many ways that hormones would do, right? At top end range to super physiological, all of the downstream effects that it has. And because of that, and because of me being relatively consistent with nutrition, which a lot of guys that like run crazy cycles on and off, that, you're inconsistent gym guy that like looks sick on trend for 3 months and then you don't see him at the gym for a year.
So
It's like,
weird. It does.
yeah, and like there's a lot of guys like that, right? And they're
Your life got in the way, and it's like, what were you? You weren't doing it. Like that time that you were taking the gym is still there. You're just like,
yeah. Like I feel like I have a situation where, I'm on, like, my physique is smaller, so it's like you said, it's like leaving gains on the table. There's still a lot more to push for me if I want to push that. But I also feel like, and maybe you have a different opinion, so let me know. But like, I feel like if I drop the test, I feel like I would actually be relatively close to where I'm at because I haven't.
You would look less. You would look less dense, but
right,
like,
and less full. But I feel like a lot of this tissue, because like,
same.
what's that?
You'd be about the same as far as just your overall size. I think you would just look slightly higher body fat.
Right.
But that's about it, which is a really good spot because when you compare the mental, I think this is where a lot of people struggle that have been on steroids for so long, is that drop off from what superphysiological would carry. So let's say these are people that TRT with like 200 or 250, where it's basically a mini blast at all times, and they have 1,500 nanograms per deciliter type of volumes, and they try to go down to natural, and now they're at 500, and their body just can't hold up that same amount of muscle, and they just mentally self-destruct because they've interconnected their identity to their size and their leanness, and they try to cross over into this other land of like not being that, and it's just like, oh fuck. And
but more specifically, like, I think the challenge that like even I'm implying too is that, but they're relying on the drugs to get the fullness. Like, the guys where it's like they run a cycle and then their delts blow up, their traps look sick, they look geared. Like, you look at them, you're like, you're on steroids. And
it's not a great look.
no, I mean, I don't like it. That's why, like, that's one big reason, the look and the health is like why I don't chase that. It's like I don't want that. But like, I know guys like that, and they skip breakfast, they have a shitty greasy lunch, way too high fat, no carbs, and then dinner they'll have a rotisserie chicken and 2 beers. So it's like very shitty diet.
Yeah.
But the drugs, they get this cosmetic look that's acute, transient, and then they dropped the drugs, and no real tissue was laid.
No, yeah.
Like that's
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know the science behind all that, so I'm kind of out my league here, but that's my theory is like if you're going to use hormones to any level, and then this would be reasonable. It's like hormones plus nutrition plus lifestyle, you're rocking, right? If you go hormones and then nutrition and lifestyle is way down here, you can get a sick look, but you are now relying on the drugs being this level to get that look. But if you can bring your nutrition lifestyle up here, you drop the drugs, I don't think your look drops as much as it would as if you relied on the drugs as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I kind of think of this in a formula is let's say we have a scale of 0 to 10 of what my lifestyle looks like. So we'll even say just what my stress looks like, what my diet looks like, what my sleep looks like, and what my training looks like. So we've got 4 points of like 0 to 10s. All drugs is basically a multiplier of those factors added up. And that determines like my growth rate, right? And if, let's say all those things are out of 5, which is extremely bad. I would categorize that as extremely bad. So what that would probably look like for a 5 across everything would be 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep. You have a manual labor job with deadlines. You have a diet in which you only hit you're not even hitting your macros, you're somewhat getting close to your calories that would induce growth 3 out of 7 days of the week. And even then, I'm not even sure you would be in a surplus at that point. You would probably just gain fat because you're probably eating too much on a rest day, not eating enough on a training day.
It's you know what it is? It's low protein, high fat, high carb. That's what happens. Yeah. Yeah.
You're having some restaurant meals because
Yeah.
you're so busy, and it's like you weren't busy, you were not prepared. And we just add all those things up, and it's like I'm not even sure you're growing to that point because let's say we even make that scale not a 0 to 10, but a -5 to a +5. Because if we don't get enough sleep, let's say in a cut, despite everything else being fine, you're going to lose muscle. You're going to lose muscle at a pretty quick rate. Same thing across diet, same thing across sleep, whatever. I think that's probably a more appropriate algorithm to create. And it's not going to, some people have different drug multipliers for them. Some people react so Erin, for example, hyper responder to drugs. She can, before she went on, she had a total of 650, 700. She went on, and after a year and a half, she was top 10 all time in her weight class.
Hell yeah.
In powerlifting, which is just at 165. And went to the American Pro, went to all these different meets. She put up, in her first multiply meet, put up a top 5 all-time total ever.
That's so sick.
Which is just that is such it blows my mind. There's just people that are like that. I've been on for 10 years. I'm not anywhere close to this results. And that's despite, and sometimes trying as hard as I can, sometimes not doing so great. But despite that, the duration that I've been on, not even close. Not even close. And there's people that just respond in that way, in which their drug multiplier of their equation is just so strong because of whatever genetics that they have just induces the most insane neurological gains and hypertrophy and just everything. You got a Nick Walker, for example,
Dude,
right?
yeah. Oh yeah, I know a buddy who's
Fridge.
he would literally take from a freak factor perspective, probably honestly any of the top pros, right? They've all self-selected as genetic hyper responders to drugs, probably hyper responders to everything anabolically, right? I have a buddy who he was very much up and down. he was into fitness for a while. He actually started coaching before I did, and when I was opening my coaching company, my personal training company in 2017, he actually subcontracted me some of his clients in Toronto here because he was going to school somewhere else. So I actually worked some of his clients and got some really good in-person, in-home experience at that time. But he would get into like CrossFit, go hard on that. Then he'd go hard into weightlifting. Then he went hard into bodybuilding. Then like he would have these like hard obsessions, and like I'm kind of like
Yeah.
that too.
Yep. I know. I
But
kind of
he
know the
would
type
like,
of person that you're talking about. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But he was also like he was well read. Like he could chop it up about anything fitness and health, right? Like he's probably a subject matter expert above average in any of these realms. Like he would consume all of Peter Attia's stuff, all of Huberman's stuff, and he liked reading like the science. He liked the bro science, like the nitty gritty in the gym stuff too. But he would respond extremely well. Like he would do these weird diets, and he would do like keto, and he'd have cap delts, and you're like, but you have zero glycogen. This doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
he'd be on 40 milligrams of Anavar, and like he just looked good all the time, no matter. He could do the basically what I'm describing is the antithesis nutrition setup to support the training. It'd be the opposite. They'd be fighting each other, and he would look amazing. And you're like, how is this happening? Like there is a genetic predisposition for some people that just will naturally respond extremely well, cosmetically or performance wise, I think.
Yeah. It's kind of a bell curve.
Yeah.
I would say because we look at an actual bell curve and like what the percentages of populations look like, and to have what I would consider bad genetics is less than 2.5% of everybody. Less than 2.5% of people just won't make it.
Not going to
They're
make it.
just whether that's mental, whether that's physical, they're just nothing that they do will ever work because that's just how they are. And then you've got the next quadrant over, which is like 45% of people. And it's just like you have okay genetics, which I think a lot of people just kind of lie in. And I think these people are generally, whether they work hard or not, they get some results. Not bad, not good, but like doable. The next quadrant over, which is that other half of the bell curve, which is another 45%, like decent to good genetics. I would say if these people compete, they're kind of successful on like a regional level. If they're a power lifter, they're totaling over 1,600, 1,700, 1,800. They can get there pretty well. And then you've got the hyper elites, which are that top like 2.5% again, where you've got actual IFBB pros. We've got guys that are totaling 2,000. We've got the Taylor Atwoods of the world where they're 165 and they're totaling fucking 1,800. They're just one of those guys. You got the John Hacks, which is like that they're at the 0.00001% of the world. And you know what? What's kind of crazy too is just so happened that person happened to get into the right sport so like now we're coming down to probabilities of them even entering the right sport. There's people that have hyper elite genetics that just never entered sports. People with hyper elite genetics that never went into football, but could have likely been an all pro. But for whatever reason or not, they're like, I don't really like football. I'm just not really into it.
Yeah, or they didn't have the opportunity or whatever.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's just within kind of thinking about the US, because we just have this high concentration of hyper elite, mainly because of opportunity to sports, versus now we've got the rest of the world. We've got people in Spain, we've got people in Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, whatever. And there's still millions of other people that have this ability and this not I would say opportunity, but like they have the ability to be on the same level as the people that we have here in the US. But like for whatever reason, it could be their country's in a war. Their country is not well off economic wise, and don't have access to the same quality of food that we do. Their stress is just like the sleep, just like the whole thing. Like they just don't have the same opportunity to the same success that you know, somebody with a more well-fortuned birthright, got access to. Not to say that's unfortunate. I think it's just kind of sports doesn't matter anyway. It's not something that actually, I would say, is like a contributor to the society. It's just like this entertainment thing that like people can make money at.